Chris. I'm not Chaz Ebert.
But you play her on TV.
I could be if I wanted to be, but I'm not. I'm Nate Cohn. I think you probably all know me. Chaz is on her way. She should be here any minute, but we thought we'd go ahead and entertain you until she arrives. So this is Christy, Lemire, and Ignatiy Vishnevetsky.
Vishnevetsky.
That's close.
Accept both answers.
And they're the co-hosts of Ebert Presents at the Movies. And I'm going to let them sort of take over and run this show until Chaz shows up. So maybe what we should do is just go down the panel and have everybody introduce themselves. Yes. Starting with Christy.
I'm Christy.
I'm Ignatiy Vishnevetsky of Movie.com.
I'm Alison Bales. I write for More Magazine and a new website. I'm going to publicize it like crazy, buzz60.com. Everyone should get their news and sports and entertainment info from buzz60.com.
My name's Matt Singer. I'm a writer and a host for IFC, the Independent Film Channel, and my next contribution on the show is this weekend, is tonight. So you should all watch.
What's
tonight.
it about, Matt?
What is it about? It is about the Brian De Palma film Blowout, which came out on a Criterion Blu-ray and DVD this week, which is also worth your time as well. So I know a lot of people are probably going to see the movie tonight. I spoke with Norman Jewison. He said we'll take a little time out in the middle of the movie, and everyone will go and watch my segment. So you won't miss it. Don't worry.
You can also watch it online at ebertpresents.com.
Yeah, I guess. Why?
Here's Roger. Chaz is here as well. Let's go on. Kartina?
Kartina Richardson of mirrorfilm.org.
Good morning. My name is Dan Gire. This is Roger Ebert. I have the pleasure of serving as the president, founding director of the Chicago Film Critics Association, and I am the film critic of the Daily Herald newspaper in Chicago. We're the third largest paper in the state of Illinois, outside of the Tribune and the Sun-Times. I also must add that we're the one that's not bankrupt.
I'm David Poland from Movie City News, also not bankrupt. Saw Blowout in Chicago when I was a small child. That's how old I am. I think I may be the oldest person on the panel, except for Dan. I don't know, Dan. What do you think?
You look pretty young to me, David.
Thank you, Dan. And I throw some stuff at the wall at the show occasionally as well. Oh, Chaz. You look so much more like Chaz.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chaz.
Did you start this way, or are you going this
We're done.
We introduced ourselves.
We're all introed.
You're all introed. Okay, well, thank
Matt.
you for being here. You are or are not?
Yes, we're all good.
You're
Matt
all good.
Solarzites is MIA, but that's not.
And we even have a full panel here. I didn't know how many people would make it back from karaoke last night, so.
I stayed up all night to watch the royal wedding, by the way.
You watched the royal wedding. Okay.
It was magical.
Well, our topic today is creating the new Ebert Presents at the Movies. And we have, with Roger, I actually call them the disciples because there are 12 of them. And two, Christy Lemire and Ignatiy Vishnevetsky are our co-hosts. And then the rest are contributing correspondents. And we will be probably enlarging the number of correspondents as well, because Roger felt that it was, well, both Roger and I felt that I felt, and Roger agreed. You know what? I'm so used to giving him credit for everything, but I felt, and Roger agreed, that it was important in today's world to give voice to a wider complement of opinions. And one of the things that that we have on the web is a group like RottenTomatoes.com and Metacritics, and sort of aggregating websites where they aggregate the opinions of critics. We wanted to make sure we continue to have a distinct voice so that it's not that we're aggregating opinions. Each critic has his or her own opinion, but we just wanted to have a wider array of opinions. We thought that was important. And you know, the show that started out as coming soon to a theater near you 35 years ago on public television, and then it became sneak previews and continued on in one form or another for almost 35 years until Disney discontinued its run. We even had the critic Michael Phillips here, and that's for if there's anyone, any journalist here, I'll tell you, people ask all the time online, we read the little comments, are we, you know, what happened to Michael Phillips and A.O. Scott? What about Richard Roper? We're friends with all of them. They all are still dear friends of ours. And to lay rest to any other critic, Elvis Mitchell is still a friend of ours. So we were reading something about him recently online too. The audience this morning could probably care less about that, but I'm just saying because everything you do and say these days ends up online somewhere. You know, I actually saw a picture of me singing at karaoke last night that I didn't know existed. So
Sorry about that.
It was a really moving rendition of Super Freak, Chaz.
It was super.
So this time, what I wanted to do this morning is have the critics talk about not just the show, really, but the state of film criticism that, as they find it today. Why does Christy Lemire think it's still important, besides a paycheck, to work for the Associated Press or to do film reviews on TV? Why does Dan Gire still think it's important to have the Chicago Film Critics Association? You know, why does Alison think it's important to write for More Magazine, and Matt Singer for IFC, and David Poland? Why does he have sometimes snarky, sometimes biting, always really informational stuff on Movie City News? Why does Kartina Richardson do such poignant and moving segments for Ebert Presents at the Movies? I think we're going to show her I Am Love piece. I love that, but also on her own website. So why don't we start? And I'm going to start from the middle. I'm going to start with Matt Singer.
Of course. Why is film criticism important? Go. No pressure.
In 10 words or less.
Where exactly would you like me to start, Chaz?
I'd like for you to start wherever you want to start.
A long time ago,
No.
in a small town in New Jersey. No?
I will give you more. I'd like for you to start with, let's talk about independent films and the sorts of films that IFC picks up.
Well, you know, it's funny because I do work for IFC, and IFC Films has become such an amazing distributor of films. Ryan Werner was here last night, and on the panel for Tiny Furniture, they released Tiny Furniture. And they have the same name, they're the same parent company, but, you know, people always sort of expect that you know, like when they meet me, they're like, why didn't you release my movie? Or why don't you distribute this movie? And I'm like, I don't have anything to do with that, I'm very sorry. But they are doing amazing things, and I know you guys were talking on the panel last night about VOD, and I think that's
and VOD, video
on demand, watching movies on demand on your cable system or even on your computer now. I think that's a really amazing development. I know Ryan was talking last night about how when IFC Films first started doing that, and they were really one of the first, that people were worried that was going to destroy the theatrical experience, which I know I consider very important too, but you know, for a lot of the films that IFC Films is releasing, these are movies that would not get a very large theatrical release anyway. So the fact that they're available is, I think, a pretty amazing thing.
You know, I just remembered something. How many of you in this room have actually seen the new incarnation of Ebert Presents at the Movies?
No pressure. You don't have to say yes.
Seriously? Wow.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I'm going to change the tack a little bit. The reason I wasn't going to do it this way before is I didn't know how many of you had seen it. Those of you who have seen it, of course, have seen Christy and Ignatiy. You probably saw Matt Singer's brilliant piece on making movies on an iPhone. You probably saw Alison Bale's, I loved her eco-doc piece. David Poland had his Banksy piece during the Oscars. There's a little obscure for some people, but I thought that it was great because I kept wondering if Banksy did show up at the Academy Awards, what would he look like, what would he wear?
We were told that a midget would show up to accept the award, actually, was what they decided, ultimately.
They were worried that 5 different guys would show up in monkey masks saying, I'm Banksy, no, I'm Banksy, no, I'm Banksy. That was actually their concern. Yeah.
So instead of talking
wanted to make
about
a mockery of that Academy Award
we've just been
show.
joined by Matt Zoller-Seiss. All right?
I'll tell you about TV in the digital age. It's covering the royal wedding.
Did you stay up for it, or did you nap first?
Yeah, I did. So,
Me too. How you
so
feeling?
I'm not completely responsible for any grammatical errors that I might make at this point in time. So.
Okay.
So when Kate and he broke up the first time.
All right, so we're going to move on to Kartina. And Kartina, in addition to, I'd like to, how do you, some of the pieces that you've done for the Ebert Presents show, you've done I Am Love, which is showing here, and Tilda Swinton will be here at the festival. You did a piece on Black Swan, sort of the psychological assessment of why the ballerina was obsessed, or what happens when she's obsessed. And you did something on
Thin Man.
the Thin Man series. So tell us a little bit about how you select what you do for those segments.
I don't really have a process of how I select them. It's just, I mean, Black Swan, I saw Black Swan, and I immediately wanted to write about it, and then I immediately wanted to do a segment about it. And same with I Am Love, and the Thin Man series has just been my favorite, some of my favorite movies ever since I was a baby, I guess. So it's just the movies that really, really move me. But can I say something about
Sure,
going
absolutely.
back?
Go right ahead.
About the importance of why film criticism is still important. I think it's important, kind of more important than ever, because of the internet, really, which gives a voice to the voiceless, or people that usually do not have exposure, women or people of color. And especially with women, I think a lot of women can sometimes be hesitant to take up space, literally and figuratively, and saying I have something to say, like about a movie, film criticism, is taking up space. And I think the internet eases you into that for the simple reason that there's a little bit of a wall, a veil. So then you get used to it, and yeah.
Kartina is also a filmmaker, and one thing that we're working on a segment on race and the movies. We noticed that there at the Academy Awards this year, there was not one African-American presenter, and usually, over the years, there have been some African-Americans who have won awards. We were like, well, where are they this year, and what's happening? What is the state of black filmmaking in America? So Kartina is working on a piece about that now, and we'll have that on the show. Dan, let's go to Dan Gire.
Well, when Chaz informed me that I was going to be on the panel, the first thing I thought about was, why is this show important? Why should this show exist? Why should it be supported? Why? Who cares? We're already being inundated by criticism that film critics in the internet age are irrelevant anymore. that the democratization of the internet has rendered critics, knowledgeable, educated critics, obsolete. I think that's nonsense. And so the question was, why is this show important? And that's what dogged me. For the last week, I've been thinking about that. Why is this show important? Why is Ignatiy and Christy and what they do worth what they do? This morning in the shower, the answer came to me. The answer is this. It's important because at the movies is a movement. I mean that. It's a movement. It's not the start of a movement. It is a continuation of the movement that Chaz talked about. In 1975, that show at a theater near you with Roger and Gene, two guys from Chicago who took on the movies with a ferocious intelligence, a ferocious emotional quotient, and they turned the act of discussing film into a grudge match, a spectator sport. And it was underlined with the same thing that Ignatiy and Christy are doing today. That is, the underlying theme is that motion pictures are not just mere amusements. They are not distractions. They are bona fide art forms that entertain, but art forms nonetheless. And this is where we're losing people in America. You're all here today because you probably share the same sensibilities as the people on this panel, I'm guessing. So it doesn't take any brains to figure out that what are movies done? They're monetized. They are monetized. They are discredited, and they're taken for granted. All you have to do is look at a TV show and watch your favorite motion pictures. Some of the all-time classics are on television sets, and they are used as backdrops for animated little cartoons advertising the next episode of Jersey Shore, or a big giant corporate logo subtly emblazoned into the film frame. It's this kind of denigration that I think this show stands against. This show is for acknowledging motion pictures as an art form. And I think that that's what they do, and how can I, and you know, you mentioned about the aggregating of scores.
Yeah.
All right, what Christy and Ignatiy do is they do what genuine film critics do, all of the people on this panel do. They sit down and they analyze a film and then they create a work of art of their own, the critique. That's a work of art of its own. And it is that because if you do it right, there's not a single critic's work that is identical to anyone else's. They are as individual as a thumbprint. And that a review done properly takes in that critic's individual qualities, education, religion, background, culture, training, experience, their sense of ethics, morality, everything that is that critic finds its way into those reviews in some different areas, you know, in different levels. And I think that that's what makes a true critique, an art form criticizing an art form. And I think that that's what we're losing today, because there's this small but definite movement to crush the individuality, the art, out of the art form of film criticism. And you mentioned look at what Metacritic is doing. Look what Rotten Tomatoes is doing. What they do is they take all of these individual works and they decide if they're positive or negative, if you're fresh or you're rotten on the Rotten Tomato meter, and then they put them into baseball scores. This film got 68%. This film got 77%. This film beat that film. This film got more points. That's how it works. And so you end up with this incredible, you know.
It's an interesting moment. There's a confluence of two things. I think there's marketing of the movies, which has overwhelmed criticism for the last 20 years or so, particularly the last 10 years, where every single movie you see coming out of a studio is spending $30 to $50 million in America only to sell you the movie, which generally sets an imprint in people's minds whether they're going to go to the movie or not, and they don't even get to the Friday afternoon newspaper to read the criticism of the film. That has worked in combination with the internet, basically democratizing things. Democracy is the death of opinion and authority. And ironically, Roger, who was obviously prematurely silenced in terms of his literal voice, has kind of taken up the cudgel on the internet to create an authoritative voice on the internet. But what I think we find now in a lot of places, I mean, we have the New York Times critics are important because they're at the New York Times. Love Manola, love Tony, but a lot of it has to do with, if you read the New York Times, they're an authority, and it comes along with the gig. But finding that authoritative voice again is what's really, I think we've kind of like seen, criticism has kind of died, and now we're seeing the phoenix come up again. And ultimately, the strongest voices and the smartest voices and the voices that do inspire people to want to read in mass, to not just see another thumbs up or thumbs down, with due respect to Roger. But, you know, that kind of, reading Roger has always been a more complex situation than a television show. It's a challenge for the show, I think, to be as complex, and I think choosing Ignatiy, for instance, is a positive step in that direction, as Christy as well. But, I mean, Ignatiy, as you've seen on the stage during the festival, is very into the detail work, very into the specifics of each of these movies, the history of cinema. It's a different kind of voice. Christy is a more traditional voice. But developing these voices and finding authority again is really what criticism has to do to survive. Because otherwise it is just a show of hands. And unfortunately, we see that show of hands every week at the box office chart in your local newspaper, which has become, unfortunately, the defining character of cinema. It's quite frustrating.
Well, but that's exactly what I'm talking about. Everything is, on Monday morning, when everyone rushes to the newspaper or online and they want to read, what's the #1 box office hit of the week? Insidious, #1 box office hit, #1, $33 million. That wins, see? That's the best film of the week because the box office said so, and it beats all the other films. And then if Ignatiy or Christy comes in, or yourself comes in, and they say, well, wait a minute, let's examine this. It may not be exactly the biggest success of the week. Take in production costs and look at the per-screen average, and no. See, people don't want to hear that. That's complex. They just want to know who won. That way they know what films lost. You
know, part of it is that somebody like myself not even interested in seeing Insidious. I'm not even going to review Insidious. I'm not going to go see Insidious. I don't care about Insidious at all.
Fun.
You know, it is terrible.
And yet,
I had fun. I enjoyed Insidious. It knows what it is.
Overwhelmingly wrong.
I'm quite often right. And I had a good time in Insidious. It knows what it is. It has a good time with it. Anyway, continue, David. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's not that I am saying it's a bad, I don't know it's a bad movie. Maybe it's a great movie, just not something in my wheelhouse. You know, and you guys are responsible to see everything to do the show. But I'm not anymore. I freed myself of that burden.
Well, one of the things we do think, and this is a decision that we made, Roger and I talked about the vision for the show, and we think it's important to continue to review current films, popcorn films, you know, big blockbuster movies, as well as the smaller movies. There was one show where we figured out we had, out of about 6 movies we were reviewing, I think 3 of them were rather obscure French films, and so we said maybe we should put one on a separate show and have, but we think it's important to have the blockbusters as well as the foreign films and independent films. Alison?
I came from IFC before. I did a show at NBC for 4 years, which was, I suppose, an attempt to cash in on the Siskel and Ebert themed show. I think unlike everyone here on this panel, I come from a TV background rather than a print background. And I like to see myself, or I don't like to see myself, but I see myself now as a living example of what's happened to TV criticism. I did the NBC show for 4 years. It was canceled because it wasn't profitable. I mean, there was no, that was why it was canceled. And every local station in New York where I live has fired their film critic or let go their film critic. No one wants a film critic anymore because, as these guys said, no, people don't want opinions. They just want sort of good, bad. And now I do most of my work on the internet. I have my own website. It's the only place where I can write lengthy reviews. The writing I do for More Magazine is minuscule. They don't want to spend a lot of time on films, and we also don't, it's really just a recommendation. It's not really reviewing. So I write on my own website, and the new website that I'm working for, But that's why, for me, this show has been so important, and I'm so happy to be involved with it, because it's bringing back something that seemingly, or people keep telling us isn't wanted, which I refuse to believe, because I think a voice in film criticism is important. And one example is when I saw No Impact Man, the eco-documentary, I don't know if you know it, a couple of years ago. I wrote a script and I sent it to the Today Show because I do work for them occasionally, and I know the senior producer and the executive producer. So I sent this script and I was very gung-ho about it, all about the environment and how we can make a difference. And their response was, no, it's too, it's not sexy enough, it's not, I don't know. So, when I got to do the piece for you guys, something that's very dear to my heart, it was just such a relief to have an outlet, to have intelligent television again. Well, I mean, I hope my piece was intelligent, but I think the show is very intelligent. All the pieces are so smart and just interesting perspectives. So I'm very grateful for that, and I hope things prosper, and this is the start of a return to maybe how things were 10, 20 years ago.
In fact, Alison's piece is still on. If you go to ebertpresents.com, you can find Alison's segment and some of the others, Matt's and some of the others that were done as well. Matt has joined us this morning.
He's actually early for the 10 o'clock panel.
And then we're going to come to Christy and Ignatiy and then open it up to questions.
Could you repeat the original question? Or
Actually, we've jumped around on some questions. If you'd like to wait, we can move on to Christy and
Matt was one of my
Ignatiy again.
favorite film critics at New York, and retired to become a filmmaker. And now he's kind of doing a hybrid of both. And I'm curious as to how that's evolved for you and why.
Oh, well, that's too long a story to tell here, but suffice to say that as I'm listening to some of the remarks here, and I'm worrying if maybe, like, even though these phenomena that we're discussing are important and should be discussed, there are times when I fear that we are all, as critics, placing a little too much stock in where we fit in the marketplace and the relative receptiveness or hostility on the part of the audience towards what we do. The people who, the first thing they do when they get up in the morning on Monday is check Metacritic or the box office reports, I don't think any of us are ever going to win those people over. I just really don't. And I feel like, and this is probably really Pollyanna to say, but I think that people don't read criticism. I think people read critics. And I think they find, if they're lucky, a few, if they even care to read that sort of thing, they find some people that they respond to, who they feel an affinity for, either positively or negatively, whose opinions are consistent enough that they can judge their own against them. Either say, this person, based on what I know about reading them, if they like it, I'm going to hate it. Or if they like it, I'm going to like it. And I think once that's accomplished, there's, to my mind, there's really nothing else beyond that. I just don't see, I think about this discussion of is criticism still important? Was it ever important? What can we do to make it more important to people generally? In a way, it reminds me of the conversations that I had with a lot of my colleagues about 10 or 15 years ago about the state of movies in the 90s. Are they as good as they were in the 70s, in the golden era? And when we talk about movies of the 70s, we're talking about the ones that we remember, the ones that time has consecrated as being memorable. But we don't mention so much maybe Earthquake. or the big bus, or Swarm, right?
Well, Matt, I agree with you, and in fact, I wanted to. Roger wrote an essay talking about the golden age of film criticism, which he meant is now, not in the past. And he said that actually, I remember some years back, before, when internet critics were not even allowed to go to movie screenings, Roger fought for them. He said, this is actually the future. This is a time when a lot of people weren't talking about blogs and things like that at the time.
There were no
And
blogs.
There
They didn't even exist yet.
Well, there were
early internet.
blogs, but they were just they were in a very beginning stage, because Roger was always ahead of the curve on a lot of things like that, especially on tech issues, because he was a fanzine geek when he grew up, and he was an early adopter of computers and of a lot of things. And he also saw the intelligence of some of the people. I remember, what is his first name? James Bernard Nellie, I think, was one of the first. He was this engineer who used to write about movies, and people would say, well, we don't really want to let him in, and Bernard Nellie and a whole host of now what we call internet critics, Roger fought with the studios to get them a place in the screening rooms. And, you know, the ones that were in first also learned the rules of, because the journalists some of them went through schools and went through, you know, had to learn things about the ethics of writing and what you do, and respecting the, you know, when a review is printed. And some of the guys who were writing from their mother's basements didn't know all of that. And then they had to learn it, but Roger did fight for it, because he said, this is the future. And some of you posted the article that he wrote in 1987 talking about what the state of movies was going to look like today, and except for one thing in that article, everything is amazingly the way it is. So Roger said that now, instead of, like you, Matt, he said, instead of lamenting what is lost, let's talk about what we can do and what is important. And even now, you know, I love my husband and I love talking about him. So just, even now, you say, maybe you don't read criticism, you read the critics. Even now, in the age when people say people don't want to read the reviews, his website gets over 105 million hits a year, over 10 million hits a month. And when we do the Google Analytics or other analytics to see who's reading what, it goes deep, and people are reading reviews from years ago when he writes about them, when others write about them.
But to Matt's point, Roger is the critic. I mean, right now, as you look at it, the one brand that the studios value in terms of his review, the power of the thumbs, the 2 thumbs he took away from Disney when they were mean and idiotic, and now are back in play, very valuable to the studios as a marketing tool. But Roger is the one person that you land on as Roger Ebert. If the Sun-Times went away tomorrow, and God, I hope it won't, and I know Roger hopes it won't, but Roger Ebert would still be standing. You know, the Sun-Times could fall apart around him, and he would still be there. So the next Roger Ebert is the challenge.
The thing about Roger is that I love about him is he is so generous, and he wouldn't think that, you know, he would like to extend the banner to everyone and bring everyone along, which is, you know, one of the reasons that we are extending the correspondence. Let's hear from Christy and Ignatiy.
At the same time?
No. You go first. I want the last word, so you go first.
I have to go. No, you say something.
Something. You go first, and I'm going to finish.
What am I going to say? What am I going to talk about?
Why do we matter?
Why we matter.
That doesn't have to be the topic. No, you can just talk about what you like about movies or criticism or being on the show or any, you know.
What do I like about movies? I like a lot about movies, Chaz. It might take a while for me to list off what I like about movies. Listen, I think that we live in sort of a...
no, you know what, Ignatiy? Let me ask you, go straight to... No, I know what question I want to ask you.
Okay, what question do you want to ask me?
And I know this is a question that you hate.
Okay.
How tall are you?
How does it feel for you to have been chosen for the spot on that show?
It was really daunting at the beginning. It's still slightly terrifying, to tell you the truth. No, it is. You know, I have trouble sleeping. But no, anytime before we shoot a show, I normally have a very hard time getting to sleep.
I didn't know that.
No, why do you think I arrive so groggy and usually like 15, 20 minutes late? Well, no, that's actually the driver. That's not my fault in that case. Thank you, Chaz. It's very daunting, but at the same time, you can't let it get to you, because then you sort of get on this path where all you're doing is thinking, well, this was done this way before, and such was able to do this and this and this with the format. And I think the key is to just sort of, you have to not think about that. You've got to just kind of dive head in and, accept whatever happens. You can't constantly be worried. It's a very, it's a tried and true format. It is significantly older than I am. This is true.
24 versus 35.
Yeah, it's 11 years older than I am, the show's format. So it's been around for a while. It obviously works. And you just sort of, you have to put your faith in it and hope that it's going to, that it's going to carry on, that whatever you do is going to work in it. At first it's very terrifying, and it's my first, I had never been on television before the show started. And when you start out on TV, I guess, or from my from my personal view, you have all of these preconceptions about what does and doesn't work on TV, and that's what you start with. And very quickly you discover that everything you thought about TV is completely wrong. That everything you thought is the way, say, that people on television behave, quote unquote. You discover that that's, it doesn't work. So it took a while to get through all of that, to learn to just relax and not try to be maybe, a television person, quote unquote, which isn't really what you should be on TV anyway. So getting picked or getting asked to be on the show, obviously I said yes, I quite quickly, I believe. You don't say no to an offer like that. But no, it meant, getting a lot of faith put in you. And when someone kind of gives you that sort of power, that kind of opportunity, it kind of makes you push yourself. You have to be as good at it as you humanly can. And at first that's a little nerve-wracking, but then you just kind of get used to driving yourself forward.
Thank you for that answer. You told me a lot of stuff I didn't know. Christy, any questions?
I have a thought on the state of film criticism.
Yeah, let's get back to the state of film criticism.
I'm enjoying talking about you, though, and your sleepless nights. They're kind of fun.
I've just had one, so.
I know, me too. I don't know. The whole topic is so masturbatory and navel-gazing and inside baseball, and I sort of feel like either you write about film or you don't. People either read you or they don't, and it's a great privilege to have the opportunity to do it, but I don't feel like we're the answer. I feel like we're the beginning of approaching the question, and it's a great privilege to have the opportunity to begin that dialogue. And if people don't read you, the world keeps turning, and we're not curing cancer, and it's not rocket science. We sit in the dark for a living, and then we write. And no, seriously, I love my job, and I'm lucky that I know that I love my job. But I'm not I mean, that's the reality is that it's one of the things that's killing cancer is that if you do this job. The people who work at studios and publicity who marketing who are idiots, I'm telling you that are also saying to them they have to be curing cancer every day to get to work. No, I don't take anything that seriously.
I do. I take it definitely seriously.
It's a privilege and it matters, but you're not changing the world.
I don't think it's a privilege.
It absolutely
it's
is.
the worst privilege I could possibly think of.
You get to begin a cultural dialogue, and that's it's a lovely thing to have.
Yeah, but you and I have kind of a slightly different situation in that because we're talking about essentially film criticism.
We are on television. A very large percentage of our audience does not read film criticism. So I think you and I have kind of the opportunity we have is to kind of to get the ball rolling, to get people interested in ideas, to get them discussing, then maybe they want to read something.
That's the whole point, though, is that we do get the ball rolling. I think that's what we
We're
do.
like reading Rainbow.
I hope that wasn't an insult aimed at reading Rainbow. I hope
that was not an insult. I love LeVar Burton.
No, but my point. But I agree with you. This is what happens a lot when Ignatiy and I agree on a film, is that we actually come at it from different ways, but we both agree. I agree that we are the beginning of a conversation. I don't think we are the be-all, end-all.
No, I agree with that, except you're missing one point, the overall picture, which is the most important thing that you guys do, and that is that you are presenting and prompting and promoting critical thinking about something people don't think about. And anytime you two can, on a national basis, prompt and promote critical thinking, that is not bad for a democratic society.
And I can tell you some of the letters that we get about the show and from RogerEbert.com and EbertPresents.com. You know, the one thing that I like about the people who sort of follow Roger or follow the show is we get some very intelligent comments back. I know some websites fight against a lot of "you suck," "no, you suck," "dude, you suck." And, you know, that's really not what we get. We get really, you know, there are some things that everyone doesn't agree with us. You don't expect everyone to. But occasionally we get things that are so sort of tender and so loving, and letters from people who say, actually, it did matter. It did matter that Roger recommended a movie that they saw that meant so much to them while they were going through some life change. Or maybe it's someone who is housebound and, you know, gets a chance to see movies that we recommend that are streamed, or movies that may not come to their town. We have the Ross brothers here, and their movie, you know, some of and I'm just going to just say this. Frankly, I know that some of the movies and things that Roger saw when he was in the hospital for a year of hospitalization over a period of time, did help save his life. It matters. It matters. Movies matter. They are a form of entertainment, but they're a form of so many other things that you said. They are a cultural indicator. They are so many things and so deeply. And I know how much Roger cares about movies. I know how much I care about them passionately. And I know Christy cares about them passionately. I like her attitude of saying, nothing, you know, that's just Christy. She's saying, okay, she's not going to sweat the small stuff. If this is small stuff, she's not going to sweat it. That's her attitude. But I know that she loves movies, or she wouldn't have been doing it this long.
Let me point out, we're in Champaign-Urbana. This whole row of people is in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois.
Because
I think there may be 3 of us who may have ever been to Champaign-Urbana if it were not for Roger creating this festival.
Thank you.
And Tilda Swinton's coming to Champaign-Urbana, and Norman Jewison's coming to Champaign-Urbana, and all these people have been here because of the power that Roger created by criticizing film. And that opportunity is there for Ignatiy, and that opportunity is there for Christy, and that opportunity is there for pretty much everybody in this panel. There's the opportunity to create something, to build an audience, and then to do something with it, to take it somewhere other than just writing words on a paper or on the internet or on television. And that's the great opportunity that, you know, really Roger and Jean created by finding a bigger audience and getting people interested in coming to films. When this started, it was the Overlook Film Festival. There were films that actually got distribution because they were here, including a Romer film that hadn't gotten distribution, that got distribution because it was coming here. It's a remarkable thing. It's a remarkable opportunity. And that's the thing that I've been kind of amazed with Roger, and at times disappointed when other people have had opportunities and haven't taken them, that it's a chance to actually do something great for film. And Roger has done that, and I think that you guys can do it too.
Thank you, David.
It's a great gateway drug, the show, I think. It is. I mean, I'm a little bit older than Ignatiy, and I mean, just a little. Okay, a lot. Don't put me in that dark place. And I mean, when I was growing up, the internet did not yet exist, and I couldn't read, even if I wanted to, I couldn't read Roger Ebert's film reviews. But I watched the show every week, every single week. This is true. I used to, when I was 13, I got a television, my first, like, in my room, so I could watch what I wanted to watch. And the show used to be on Sunday nights at midnight, where I'm from, and I would stay up. You know, some kids would stay up late to watch movies or something illicit. I used to pretend to go to bed so I could stay up and watch Siskel and Ebert. So, and then when the internet came around, then I could find all the reviews, and I clearly would not be here today if not for the show. So I don't know if that's important to everyone, but it's important to me. So that's why I think it really is. You know, the show is important, and is, you know, and I think you said it really well, Ignatiy, that it presents an opportunity to bring people into the world, to make them, you know, to start the conversation. You know, there's only so much
I think
you can
Christy
say
might
in
have
2
said something
minutes.
about, we've all been talking about starting conversations as we continue this conversation, which keeps starting over and over.
I love the fact that you two are so different, and obviously any show like this has to thrive on opposites, I think. And I've worked in film and television for 20 years, and I've struggled so much with feeling like I wasted my education because I didn't use the degree that I went to university for.
What was your degree, Alison?
My degree was in French and German literature. You know, I love French films. That's the remnants of my degree, I suppose, is that I'm a complete Francophile. But for 20 years working in television, where everything became shorter and snappier and sexier, and, you know, for every Fast Five that I've had to review, I would go to my husband and say, I feel useless. Why am I doing this? I'm not providing any service. My husband is a high school principal in the New York public school system, so, you know, I feel like he's doing something really good. And I'm constantly told, no, entertainment's very important, this is very important. But as TV news becomes shorter and just about box office and films like Fast Five, which I happen not to like, Roger, I saw your review. We feel a little differently, I think. But the genius of this show, and I think fortunately for most of us here that we can write, you know, for every Fast Five that the show does, you're going to do Cave of Forgotten Dreams or Double Hour, and that shows people who might not know that those films exist. I mean, you know, the multiplexes are just too powerful, and that the franchise films just take over. So yes, we have to do Fast Five, but if you can do all those other films on your show, like the films that formed you as a critic, you know, that was fascinating to see those films. Because for me, some of them, yours especially, I was like, whoa, I haven't seen that one. So I'm learning from the show too.
Oh, I'm going to do a quick commercial spot for Ebert Presents at the Movies. Those of you who are watching out there while we're streaming, we still have spaces for sponsors because it's an expensive show to produce, and we are looking for sponsors, more sponsors, to keep the show going indefinitely. So, or any of you in the audience, if you have deep pockets or rich uncles, see me out.
Or just change, any loose change you might have.
Anyway,
pennies are acceptable.
That's our commercial.
It's PBS.
Your logo here. We could be wearing something, logos right here.
The greatest movie review program ever sold.
We're going to open it up to. Oh, what? Roger has money. He's.
Yeah.
It came from one of our guests. We're going to open it up for questions and answers from the audience. Do we have a microphone here?
Wait, we'll get answers from the audience too? This is great. Can we ask them questions?
Questions from the audience.
Why are you here so early?
We do have microphones. We have a microphone.
Hey.
One of the... How are you,
Buenos días,
Ignatiy?
amigo mío, ¿cómo estás? ¿Estás bien?
Excuse me?
¿Estás bien esta mañana?
One of the things that I loved more about the Siskel and Ebert show was that it not only showed you which movies you should go to, but it really shaped the way I saw them. Like, for example, The Beauty of Black and White, or The Evils of Colorization, or the problems with panning and scanning and cropping of the movies. And the thing I love the most, of course, was the movie cliches, which Roger knows why. And I was wondering, for example, even these days, Roger talks about, for example, the 3D, what's wrong with it, why it really doesn't work. And I'm thinking for the next generation, what are going to be the topics that you will be discussing in the future?
Do you know, we actually have a show on 3D
Yeah, we've
that's
actually
being edited right now.
Yeah.
And there are different viewpoints between Roger and Christy and Ignatiy, and we have, I think, what 3D does for children
Yeah, I think
by
Nell
Nell
Minow.
Minow.
Yeah.
So that's coming on very soon, probably in June.
Yeah, we actually have already shot an episode about 3D that we'll run. We've talked about certain other kind of you could say, technical issues. Though I think it's definitely something that we should discuss more and more. I mean, definitely video on demand is an absolutely fascinating topic. And obviously we cover video on demand quite frequently on the show in the Hot and Now segment. But we just say, well, it's on video on demand. I do think that maybe at some point we should discuss how that is affecting film culture on the show, because I did a talk at Governor State University here in Illinois a while ago, and which is about an hour's drive away from Chicago. And out there afterwards, I was talking, and to so many people there, things like Netflix Instant are just such huge resources, because there aren't, for example, aren't really art house theaters out there. There isn't like a large exhaustive video rental or something along those lines. They have to depend on what they can get via video on demand or online streaming. And I feel like that has actually changed, I think, a lot about film culture and the way people are, able to see films that they wouldn't able to see before. What do you think?
We talked about it a little bit last night. I don't know if any of you guys went to Tiny Furniture last night. We kind of touched on it briefly. I'm sort of on the fence about it. I see the benefits of both. I mean, when I first saw Tiny Furniture, I saw it at home, and it's a really small, intimate film, which works just fine at home. But then I saw it last night on that big, beautiful screen, and it's shot so crisply, and it's just a gorgeous film. To see it that way was so much better. So I see the benefits of both. I'm kind of on the fence.
And we will have more theme shows, and we also are going to talk a little bit more about video on demand and streaming. I don't know if Kevin Lee is here. He's from a company
I see Kevin Lee in the
back corner there,
called Fandor.
Cross-legged with a laptop.
He's watching a movie on his laptop right now.
It's called, excuse me guys, it's called Fandor, Fandor .com, and they stream independent movies. We are going, there's Mubi.com, there's Netflix, there's so many places but we are going to have a little tutorial, if you will, on our show about a little bit more about it. Okay.
The independent business.
Can we go to the next person?
The independent business has pretty much given up on theatrical already, even though there's still some theatrical. Companies like IFC and Magnolia specifically, every single film is VOD and in theaters and a few theaters at the same time. But basically, you talk to independent producers, they've given up on the idea that they're going to have screens at all. And so they're looking to fund everything through VOD. On the flip side, the studios are looking at VOD and trying to figure out a way to make it the new DVD and to charge you more money for it. That's probably a disaster waiting to happen, because that could actually shut the doors of every movie or 80% of the movie theaters in the country in the next 10 years. So there are two different things going on. Independents need to expand their marketplace. Studio movies already have a massive footprint. You can go see any movie that opens in a weekend anytime you want. You really don't even see sold-out shows anymore because there's so many screens playing those movies. So there are two very different things going on at the same time with VOD, and then ultimately it goes to Netflix and all those other places, which it will be forever. And within the next 10 years, you'll see every movie ever made available 6 months after it opens, 10 months after it opens, forever, for a few dollars.
Thank you, David.
I would like to tell you every superlative I can think of about the show. I would never, ever miss it. I'm so thrilled
money you want
that
to give
it's
us?
on. And I also want to, this is to Roger, and the issue of film criticism and the issue of the particular individuality of each film critic. I was asked, not because I'm a film critic, but just because I love film, to introduce the film Atlantic City. And I was just so thrilled to see your review in your newest, The Great Movies 3. And I read to this group 3 of the paragraphs in that review, all of which were deeply personal. I lived in a hotel just like this in the 1970s, and the one which got an absolute, everyone just laughed, was about Tiny Tim's. You had seen Tiny Tim's
at the Sunset
room.
Marquee.
Yes, and you knew that the gewgaws and feather boas and blah, blah, blah were a reality, which was in the show, and everybody just loved that. And it was, for me, it's so great that this is not something that I could write. It's not something that anybody else here could write. You are the only one that could write that, because that is your experience and how that enriched the whole background of that particular film. So thank you, Roger.
Can we send you around the country to talk about our show?
I'd be happy to.
We should make an infomercial with testimonials.
Where are you? Where are you from?
I'm from Columbus, Ohio.
Thank
and
you.
I have to say that one thing, and Roger was there once with Jeff Frank, I don't know if you remember that, he has an independent film theater that is actually within walking distance of my home.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of films that we see here, we've already seen at that theater. So it's a great place to live.
You know what, one of the shows we would like to do is go around the country and find, not all over the country, but find really interesting movie theaters, and I'd like to do a show on exhibition in certain theaters and really interesting theaters around.
The Drexel Theater, Columbus,
Okay.
Ohio. You
All
got to
right.
keep that in mind.
Thank you.
Anybody have a pen?
Thank you for your nice words.
Kristen.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is a big topic, and I think I just suggested possibly as a panel subject for next year. But one thing that hasn't come up is the relationship of the studios to all of you. When I first started watching Siskel and Ebert many years ago, they showed clips, scenes actually, from movies. And that was one reason I tuned in, not just to hear the reviews, but to see actual scenes from movies and get a sense of whether I would want to go to them or not. And then at some point, the studio started sending trailers instead, these little montages that they have, very quick glimpses of shots, but edited together completely out of order. Mm-hmm. And they don't tell you much about the film at all. Clearly the studios are sending these things out because they're getting free airtime or free internet time for these clips, and the studios are keeping an eye on all of you and trying to manipulate you into advertising their films for them for free. And I'm sure you, to some extent, resist this, but on the other hand, the clips are shown and so forth. And I don't want to open this whole thing up to all of you talking now about how you resist the studio pressure or that sort of thing, or what kinds of pressures there are on you from the studios. But I think it would be a very interesting topic to discuss maybe next year.
Well, let me begin answering that by saying, well, we do receive what are called electronic press kits. When you watch the show, you'll see clips from movies, and we are, the distributor or the studio, we usually receive, say an HD cam tape or something along those lines, which contains about 6 or 7 clips, which is what they use for promotion for the films. Now that's when we do the movies that are currently in theaters, and because those films, for example, there aren't video copies of them available, we do have to go with the clips that are provided. And oftentimes you can very clearly tell that a studio or a distributor is trying to paint, because you have seen by the time we, because Christy and I put together the scripts, at the beginning of every segment, we say we're addressing the camera, we give our review, and then we have a discussion. The part where we give our review, obviously we write that beforehand, and we write it to these clips. And sometimes, having seen the film and now you're putting together the script, you see the clips, and they're really misleading. For example, we did a film called Soul Surfer, which has a really terrible special effect. There's an arm of a character has been digitally erased throughout the entire movie to make it look like the actress only has one arm, but it is incredibly inconsistent, and it like changes shape, but it does. It's going like throughout the entire movie. It's a really, really bad looking special effect. It is nowhere, even though it is in 80% of the movie, it is nowhere, I think, in any of the clips that we were given.
She has 2 arms. She can hold her surfboard with both arms in every clip we got.
Yeah, in every, I think
and
we
she's
we-
happy.
Yeah, we did not get a single clip of that. Sometimes it's, you know, and sometimes it's not a bad movie where they're trying to hide something. For example, we did The Princess of Montpensier, which is an IFC title, which is a movie that, you know, consists mostly of people talking in rooms, and then all of the scenes we got had sword fights in them, I think. Because it's set in the late 16th century. There are a few sword fights, but 90% of the movie is just like people looking at each other and talking, which is totally fine. But what resulted is that the clips that we were given to work with didn't actually feature one of the 2 main characters of the movie, played by Lambert Wilson, at all, anywhere.
Could
in
I
any of the
interrupt
clips
just
was
a
he visible.
second and next? Mr. Ebert, back in the day, wasn't it my imagination, or did at the movies have the ability during the 80s to actually get a print of a film sometimes. And able to choose your own clip from that film?
They get the studios to do it, I think.
Even today, we get permission to do special clips. And I know they don't like to do that, but sometimes, just for what the reasons they say, the clips that they send in the press kits may not be the ones we want to illustrate the show. And so we get permission, Kristen, to do some special clips. And sometimes we, because of under the fair use doctrine, we can use some clips. Our show is considered a news show, and if we're doing something to illustrate a particular point, then we can also use, you know, a limited amount of clips. So we do make special clips for our show. And
a few weeks ago,
one time, I just want to bring something up. There are some things though that we respect. Kartina's Black Swan piece had part of it had a clip where there was sort of blood shown, and they asked us not to use it. They didn't threaten us or anything, but they asked, and we did reduce some of the blood that was shown.
Just a few weeks ago, I wanted to do a package for the show that the show approved of for a movie that was relatively current, and I thought it was a great movie. I don't want to name the movie, but a few weeks ago, and thought it was a great movie and wanted to help promote it and talk about what it was about. Went to the studio because you don't have a DVD to steal the clip off of at that point. And I really I said, okay, I need these 5 seconds of this without Johnny Depp talk, oops, there you go. Without the talent need to get approvals, because then you have to go through their agents, you have to go through their publicists. Studio worked on it for 4 or 5 days to give me basically 30 seconds worth of clips. And in the end, they said somebody decided they didn't want it to happen. So it just didn't happen. So something that actually was positive, it wasn't embarrassing Soul Surfer and saying, you know, look at this ridiculous arm. This was something completely positive, promoting their movie. They still didn't want to do it.
That's right. I forgot all about that, David. I forgot you went through that whole thing.
And bizarre. Recently. It's like, why don't you want to promote your movie?
I think they're just inherently proprietary and kind of paranoid for no good reason.
Yes.
And it extends to every level. As low down as you want to go with publicists or as high up as you want to go with executives, they're fearful.
But there are now 20 people who have to approve if you want a clip that's not the EPK clip, it's very difficult for them to do it because they have to go to like 15 to 20 people.
I agree with the observation made earlier that this is worth something for an entire separate discussion.
Yeah. No,
because the truth of the matter is, from my experience, the people who run the studios in Hollywood make government officials look brilliant.
Kristen, I
Dan
guess you brought up a hot topic,
into another press
and
screening.
For some of you who didn't know who was asking that question, that's Kristen Thompson. She's the wife of David Bortwell. She's also a co-author with him on many books and a scholar in her own right, and is one of our panelists here, just so you know. We have Tom Dark at the microphone.
Hiya, thanks, and thanks for being so verbose, because I still can't formulate this question. And I'm up here to ask it and have you all consider it seriously. What Christy said today is my favorite saying I've heard, is that you're all not here to provide the answers, you're here to formulate questions. And the topic of, you read the box office results on Monday morning, I do the same, I always have, everybody always does. And what was the Robert Redford movie? People don't watch the questions, they come here to watch the money, you know. We all do that. And my question is based on a fact I've read periodically for years, since I read the Sunday Funnies and so forth. It is the fact I keep reading that movie houses don't make any money on the films. They make money on the concessions. You pay your $5 for a small popcorn. That's where the movie owners make the money, not from the films. And my beginning question, it needs to be formulated somehow in an intelligent way, is what is wrong with this picture?
Ignatiy, you worked at a movie theater. Tell us.
I worked at a movie theater mostly cleaning up concessions. I was what they call a float, which is movie theater talk for the person who has to clean the theaters between shows. Embarrassingly enough, that was only like 6 or 7 years ago. Actually, even less. Anyway, so it's difficult because obviously studios and distributors, a lot of the money goes to them. Running a movie theater is not a... Running a distributor is, I think, a significantly more, and that is a huge gamble, is I think a significantly more profitable business at this point than running a movie theater. And there's a lot of costs that go into, into any kind of projection, especially if you're doing 35 millimeter.
But let me let you go. I just hope to hear more thoughts than this. We all know that.
Yeah, no, everybody knows that. I'm buying myself time so that I can, I'm doing the thing where you just spout off facts until you can actually think of something to say.
That's what I'm doing.
Entire show is
Actually,
about.
anyone, I don't know if there's really an
Movie
an
theaters
answer
get paid
for that.
45% of what the movie brings in. They need to make the rest of the money on concessions. That 45% is not nothing. It does matter to them staying in business. Ultimately, every movie theater you go to that's a multiplex, if it's a personal private theater, that's one thing, but most of you see movies in theaters and multiplexes, every one of them went bankrupt about 15 years ago. And that's why when they rebuilt and you saw all these stadium seating and everything else, they actually had to go bankrupt in order to get out of their leases, to build the new theaters. And now this VOD thing with the studios, I mean, you've heard about the $30 VOD in 6 weeks or 60 days for some movies, is now threatening the entire idea of movie theaters. Because if they lose 20% of their business, say, to VOD, most of them will go out of business. So it's a very challenging thing, and the studios are just greedy. It doesn't really, and they're not.
Well, but the movie theaters aren't. The movie theaters haven't been helping themselves, and I really hate to say that as somebody who also worked in a movie theater, and I love movie theaters. But if movie theaters die off, it won't be murder; it'll be suicide.
But they can't afford. Ultimately, they're working under pressure.
Can I ask? I'm just curious about this. What are some of the things that you think they should be doing that they're not doing? When you say it's their own fault.
Well, they got rid of, I won't say it's entirely their own fault, but a lot of this could have been prevented if they were minding the store a little more. The experience, anybody in this audience can tell you that the experience of going to a typical multiplex in the United States is mediocre to terrible, routinely. You can't find, if there's a technical problem, you can't even find anybody to address it, let alone hope that it'll be addressed within 5 or 10 minutes. You can't. I mean, you can't. A lot of the places are not very well maintained, not clean. Like they don't have soap. They don't have toilet paper. They don't have.
They don't have a good float staff. That's the problem.
It's incredible.
They're all becoming film critics. That's the problem.
Well, but
system. Wow, that wasn't an insult.
But with due respect, look to the studios. I mean, it is the margins on movie theaters are so thin now that they can't afford soap. They can't afford the $10 kid to come in and make sure nobody's talking or looking on their cell phone. All those things that we got used to 30 years ago don't exist because they really can't afford them. They're really working on that thin a margin.
Well, but that's almost a chicken and the egg thing, though. I mean, at what point does the abdication of basic standards become? I don't know. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the thing is, the studios designed the new theaters to fit their needs, which are the opening weekend for Spider-Man 4. The whole thing is now designed so that an opening weekend, every single person in America can go to the movies and see that movie that weekend. and they can do a huge number of dollars in the first weekend, the second weekend, the third weekend, and then get it onto DVD, and they can make more money there. They're not interested in whether the theater experience is good or bad. In fact, in this VOD thing, as you see, it's going to creep towards a shorter window. They don't care if you go to the movies. They'd be perfectly happy for you to watch the movie on your TV and get your money that way.
Matt looks like you have something to say.
Well, we're saying the system where the movie theaters make almost all of their money on the concessions is seems so, awful. I think there are some smaller chains, though, that are doing some, this is the reality, let's work with it. And I know you guys were just at South by Southwest. I don't know if you got to see a film at the Alamo Drafthouse, that theater chain, but there's an example of they go, okay, well, this is where we're making our money, and while we're facing VOD, we have all of these things, and I think that they've embraced this idea of, well, let's make it, let's restore that experience and also make it special, and that's a place where it's not just popcorn and Skittles, you can have a meal there.
The ArcLight in Los Angeles is also like that.
Right, and you can, they'll serve you drinks, you can have alcohol, you can have wine, everything like that. And they have an incredibly strict no talking policy. You can actually anonymously.
But you're also paying $3 more a ticket.
No, it's much cheaper to see a movie there than it is in New York, where I'm from. It's about.
Well, if there was an ArcLight in New York, it would be $3 more than New York.
Maybe the ArcLight, but I mean the Alamo Drafthouse is.
But the point is, there are theaters.
Right, there are some people out there
trying to address these problems
and
to make a better viewing.
Yes.
Well, and I'd like to, I don't know how many people here from Chicago know the Music Box Theater, but it is a great theater. I don't know if anybody saw, I was very surprised to learn I believe it's last month's issue or the most recent issue of Film Comment. Many of you may have noticed that the Music Box logo appearing in front of films. They've become a film distributor besides running their own theater, which I believe isn't the Alamo Drafthouse also branching
Has
out?
done that as well, yeah.
I discovered in Film Comment, I think that the Music Box films made like $25 million last year, which is, I mean, for a movie theater is insane money, but they made it entirely, that's just money they made distributing films to other people's theaters, mostly to the Landmark, I believe.
Okay,
that's Girl with the Dragon Tattoo.
That's the last word on that. Let's move on.
Sorry, my comment's not quite as interesting, but I started watching Siskel and Ebert in 1992, and I found it invaluable because it made me want to be a film critic.
Where are you from?
Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay.
We don't have a huge film critic base there. We don't have a huge film community there. My question is, wanting to be a film critic on the internet where everybody's a critic, how do you get noticed? How do you get your name out there?
Roger.
Silence.
I know what Roger would say. Roger would say, you just start writing. You have to have something to say and a place to say it, and start writing. And it's easy to get a blog going if what you say is something that people find valuable. You sort of find your audience. Now through the social media, through Twitter and Facebook and other things, through chat groups, everything. I mean, there are people who started out, and you do eventually get noticed. But I know what Roger would say is, you have to be able to have something to say, want to say it passionately, and say it a little differently than what other people are saying.
I do. It's just the venue, trying to find the right venue to get people to notice you.
Well, let me kind of answer that comment from personal experience. As I started out, I did start out, you could say, writing online, and I still write for a website as my primary outlet. I'm here right now. I think it's the quality of the writing. I think it's the thing about the internet is that there is so much. But the other thing about the internet is that eventually somebody finds, anything will eventually be found by somebody else. Even if it's just somebody Googling, who wants to find, whether somebody, used this word and this word together, and suddenly they stumble upon your writing. In my case, I started out, just writing for a site. I didn't even have a blog. I ran a friend's site, and then I, started kind of blogging casually. Then somebody asked me, they found my writing after a few years and asked me whether I'd like to write for their outlet. and then that outlet, from there I went somewhere else and somewhere else. I think you have to keep writing. That's the thing. One thing that is helpful, I'll say, is that there are quite a few kind of hubs, I feel like, of activity on the internet, and sometimes kind of introducing yourself, appearing in the comments threads, etc., is a good way to, or it was in like around 2005, 2006. If you made a comment on Gire Shambou's blog or something, then suddenly thousands of people knew who you were and would remember your name and recognize it when it appeared as a byline.
Well, it is a little disparaging when you have a website and the only two people that have responded are a guy in Ohio and your mom.
Maybe.
But I bet your mom will tell everyone about it.
Ignatiy, can you maybe give him some of the websites that you think he may want to? I don't mean now, afterwards, because we have to wrap up. Okay. And so I want to get to the other questions. Thanks. But afterwards, will you see Ignatiy, and he'll give you some websites?
Yeah. All this talk about film criticism made me think of Pauline Kael. And she said when she started writing for The New Yorker, she said that at first she got a bunch of mail where everybody hated her. And then she said that everybody realized they enjoyed hating her after a while. And I just wanted to ask, how do all of you deal with when the time comes that you have an opinion that goes against the grain? Do you ever feel pressure to conform, or do you just want to dig in?
I can answer this. I trashed 300, and 300 had a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes prior to my review of it. And I woke up the next morning to an inbox just flooded with emails. And like somebody had posted a link to my review on some like bodybuilding or wrestling website. And they posted my email address, and I got flooded. People were like suggesting that my husband's not satisfying me, so I was very frustrated and unhappy. People were wishing birth defects on my unborn children. I mean, it's a movie, people, come on.
And how did you feel about that?
I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious because it made me so happy people were reading. And again, this goes back to the whole like we're beginning a conversation thing. People were reading, and they took the time to read it and took the time to respond, even like in a really negative, vitriolic way. I thought it was hilarious and great. I also got accused of being a racist for not liking Diary of a Mad Black Woman. But so did Wesley Morris, who is black. So anyway, and so did Roger, I believe, right?
Yeah, true. In fact, that is a very interesting question. How do you deal with it? Let's go down the line and answer that one.
I can very poorly. No, when you hold an opinion like that, it's your opinion. You do have to kind of hold on to it. You can't be pressured to, say something that isn't true. That completely goes against your profession as a critic, because, kind of your greatest responsibility is just to honestly relay whatever you might be thinking or whatever you might be feeling about a film to a reader or to a viewing audience. But I'm sort of neurotic. And I will admit that as Christy knows, I read absolutely everything anyone has said about me online.
And you cannot do that and sleep at night.
I do it. No. But you know what? It's like, you sort of, you develop almost like a callus, on I guess your whole body or your soul or whatever. You just get used to it. And eventually you can sort of handle it, and it doesn't become like as much of a big deal anymore. You just keep going, which is I think I say at the end of every sentence.
To quote my dad,
Alison, let's go down the line.
Thank you. I think that we all have to remember here that art is subjective, and there are no right or wrong answers in what we're doing. And just because I say I hated this film, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad film. I think it's a bad film, and everyone who reads me or sees me and who generally stands in line with my opinions is going to know, okay, maybe I won't like that film. I always try, it's very hard when you're giving your opinion to not just say, this is a terrible film, or this is the most amazing film ever made. You have to remember it's subjective. That's why I always read A.O. Scott in the New York Times. I find my opinions often align with his. I like his reviews. I defended Basic Instinct 2, and I've never been forgiven that. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. I'm convinced Sharon Stone was playing it tongue-in-cheek, And that movie, I don't know if there's one other person who liked that movie. I thought it was hysterical. I stand by
Director
it.
disagrees with you, by the way.
I'm sure everyone did.
Matt?
I would never go out of my way to disagree with people, but I kind of enjoy when I look up after having seen a movie, written about it, said something about it, to find that I'm, out there on a limb, or that there's other people who disagree with me. And maybe that's because, as a lover of film and film criticism, and just as a reader of it, those are my favorite pieces to read. I love when the consensus about a movie is X, and then someone else says, no, actually it's Y, and then explains why, no pun intended. Like over the weekend, I think it was Wesley Morris, who I think somebody was just mentioning his name, wrote this great piece about why the Fast and the Furious film series is like the most progressive force in mainstream Hollywood filmmaking. Now, I may not agree with him, but just the fact, and it was an excellent piece, but just the fact that someone was willing to do it, thought about it, and really put themselves out there with a quote-unquote unpopular opinion, those are my favorite pieces to read as a reader. So when I have the opportunity where I feel like, oh, I'm in that same position, I kind of relish it. I look forward to writing that, and then, like Christy said, it's kind of hilarious when someone takes something that seriously.
Kartina?
I'm like Ignatiy, and I read every single thing that's said about me on the internet. It's not healthy or helpful in any way. One of the things, don't search for your name on Twitter. That's a horrible idea. There's some people that did not like the I Am Love segment and said, Kartina Richardson is the worst thing on TV. Those segments are so embarrassing. And then that depressed me for the rest of the day. The first time I wrote something negative about a new movie was actually a post about I Am Love and Sofia Coppola's Somewhere. And I got a lot of bad feedback from that. Someone said that objectivity has a vital place in film criticism, which I thought was total and complete bullshit. But still, I was like, does objectivity have a vital place in film criticism? I don't know. Yeah, that's how I deal with it. I don't know.
Dan?
The most succinct feedback I ever received in 35 years was this: too bad your parents didn't use 2 condoms.
Wow.
All the people who hate you, all the people who hate your ideas, are merely misunderstood friends in disguise that you need to win over one at a time. And I have to say, I have a damn pretty good batting average.
Good, all right. Matt?
When I panned Natural Born Killers, I got a piece of mail written on yellow legal paper from someone saying, I wish that you had been one of Mickey and Mallory's 52 victims.
Oh.
Well, see, what was kind of funny about that, though, is those people were fictional. So to me, that kind of opened a whole hole in the time-space continuum, and we give you a window, talk about asking the questions, that sort of, fact and fiction, and yeah, but I don't know.
Does it ever bother you? Does it ever bother you if you really go against the grain? Let's say, like the instance that Christy mentioned, if every other critic has given something high praise and you've gone so far against the grain, and people hate you for it.
I don't know. I've been in that position a lot over the years, but I don't. I just think of that line from Dead Poet Society where where the teacher brings the kids over to the wall and says, "What do all these people have in common?" And then he says, "They're all fertilizing daffodils." Like one day I'll be fertilizing daffodils, and so all of those people who hate me, and what does it matter? I'm just going to keep writing,
Great, okay, and?
I've been online for 14 years, taking email and then turning it into a blog and getting blog comments. And the thing for me is I do think objectivity for me, if I'm going to take on a movie and hurt it, Because if I love something, I feel free to love it 100%. I'll, gush and do whatever I want to do. If I'm going to kill something, I'm responsible to really explain why this thing deserves to be dead. And people respond in a lot of different ways. 300 is another one where I'm still getting hate mail for that. And every other Zack Snyder movie. And actually, the studio is still angry at me over Watchmen because I did a little poem about one of the body parts of one of the characters, and they still sing it apparently in the hallways of Warner Brothers. And so they remember that more than they remember the other marketing for that movie. The thing that I've learned, though, over all these years is that they will hate you for not liking Star Trek enough. If you like Star Trek at 80% and they think it's 100%, you are the devil for suggesting that it's only 80%. There's not a perfect.
I'm sorry, I have to cut you off because I did not know there's supposed to be another panel in this room, and Norman Jewison is waiting to get on this panel right now. Let's have your question.
My question is about the show and your choice of which movies you talk about. And you mentioned this earlier, and I would wonder if you could sum it up succinctly. My preference would be for you to talk about the movies that everybody isn't going to go to, because they're already going to go to them no matter what you say. And how can you explain, why can't you do 80 or 90% of independent foreign art films that people wouldn't go to?
We actually do a great percentage of movies. The reason we don't like to spend all the time talking about those is if they're not available, if they're not streaming, if they're not on DVD, if they're not available, we don't want to have a show that's only theoretical or, it's not just a rhetorical exercise. We want to actually talk about movies that people can see and find as well. Anyway, that's the end. We're going to wrap up our session. Thank you, panelists.